the moderator, Sri Vikrant Phongse. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Gautam. And I see a good crowd out here. A hearty welcome to all of you. We have a great panel out here. Uh, जैसे बोलते हैं ना कि सर्वसमावेक पैनल यहाँ पे है, तो अतुल जी है who is going to give us a perspective from the CEO position, a top perspective. We have Bhaskar Rao, who understands the day-to-day pain areas, not just the end users but also of the management. और हमारे साथ है मनु सिंह जी. अभी हमने प्रेजेंटेशन देखा तो कैसे and I'm sure we all have also heard about the do big symposiums that they have heard. So in addition to BFSI, they have a great stack of technology which can be leveraged by the BFSI sector. And most importantly, हमारे साथ रवि जी है. Ravi ji has not only been with SVC Bank, but also is a very renowned consultant now for the cooperative space. तो पहले ज़माने में जब कोर बैंकिंग कंपल्सरी नहीं था, तब के ज़माने से हर कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स को कोर बैंकिंग सॉल्यूशन देने में जिनका बढ़िया हाथ रहा है, वो रवि जी हमारे साथ है. सो हार्टी वेलकम टू ऑल ऑफ यू. और अलका जी, आपका जो सुझाव है कि बात करने की कोशिश कीजिए. I'm trying to, we will try to do that in the overall scenarios. But at the same time, यहाँ पे कुछ लोग ऐसे भी हैं जिनको हिंदी इतनी अच्छी होती नहीं है. They prefer English. I know there are people who understand Marathi who would be more comfortable with Gujarati. But let's try to, have a mix between Hindi and English. तो विदाउट स्पेंडिंग मच टाइम, अतुल जी, पहला सवाल आपसे मैं करूंगा. टॉप पर्सपेक्टिव एंड ऑफ कोर्स गिवन अ थिंग दैट यू हैव अनदर कमिटमेंट टू मूव इन. सर, मोहिते साहब ने अभी उनके ओपनिंग रिमार्क्स में कीनोट में बोला कि यू ट्राई टू फोकस द डिस्कशन on how technology can solve the problems of cooperative banking and the current problems of cooperative banking. तो सर अतुल जी, आप अगर हमें दो चीजें आपसे मैं पूछूंगा पहले कि व्हाट आर योर व्यूज ऑन द करंट टेक्नोलॉजी अडॉप्शन लेवल बाय अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स टू ड्राइव बिजनेस ऑपरेशंस एंड ग्रोथ. ये पहला सवाल. और दूसरा, how do you think that the new technologies like AI, ML, IoT, CRM, these are good for cooperative banks, and do you think that cooperative banks will be able to derive benefit out of these? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vikrant. Thank you very much. In fact, I'm happy that you have given me the option to speak in Hindi also. Hindi is my mother tongue, so I'll be better off with Hindi as well. In fact, the subject of today's seminar was a little dicey. When I was roped in for as a panelist, I was really wondering, because the impact of COVID has not yet sunk in with the cooperative bankers, and what they are finding is that there are all trial and error method. Like जैसे कोविड में कोई दवा नहीं चल रही है और सब ट्रायल और एरर चल रहा है, and then there is a next generation of COVID or next version of COVID. The cooperative bankers have been fighting this particular story for a long time. COVID in a different sense. मुझे कई बार ऐसा लगता है कि ये टेक्नोलॉजी ने हमारा जीना हराम कर दिया है एज अ बैंकर. जीना हराम क्यों कर दिया है कि इनके सिवा हम जी नहीं सकते और इनके सिवा हम मर नहीं सकते. टेक्नोलॉजी के बगैर कोई ऑप्शन तो है नहीं. लेकिन इफ यू लुक एट फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ अ सीईओ, मुझे दो चीजें बड़ी स्ट्रांगली नजर आती है. वो ऐसी है कि जिन बैंकों ने टेक्नोलॉजी एडवांसमेंट एज अ फंडामेंटल रूटीन थिंग बनाया है, वो जिंदा रहेंगे, उन्हें कोई परेशानी नहीं है. हालांकि उसमें तुम्हारा कैपेक्स और ऑपेक्स हमेशा बढ़ने वाला है, तुम्हारे पैसा हमेशा खर्चा होने वाला है. जैसे कि इस साल मैंने अब आईटी के बजट में, जैसे अप्रैल में तो लॉकडाउन था, अप्रैल के बजट में हमने ऐसा तय किया कि भाई हम कोई नया काम नहीं करेंगे, हम सिर्फ एक चीज देखेंगे कि हमें जो साइबर सिक्योरिटी की जो गाइडलाइंस है उसमें हम कंप्लायंस करें, और उसके लिए हमें 3-4 करोड़ का इन्वेस्टमेंट करना पड़ा. वो किया हमने. हमने ये ध्यान ही नहीं दिया कि भाई हम टेक्नोलॉजी को हमारे प्रोडक्ट्स के इसमें हम लोग किस तरह से इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं। हालांकि सीबीएस का वर्टिकल इंटीग्रेशन और सब सब प्रोडक्ट हमारे पास है, लेकिन इस तरह से हमने सोचा नहीं है। लेकिन दो चीजें मैं आपको बताता हूँ, जैसे कि जो रेगुलेटर है उसने कुछ चीजें ऐसी कराई है कि आपको वो पूरा झक मार के करना पड़ेगा। जैसे कि मार्च में कंसंट्रेशन रिस्क का सर्कुलर आ गया और उन्होंने ये बता दिया कि भाई आपको जो लैंडिंग करना है वो टिपिकली तुम्हारा जो कोऑपरेटिव कल्चर है उसके हिसाब से करना है। सो यू डोंट हैव टू गो फॉर wholesale banking, you have to go for retail, and on no choice basis then the retail lending has got mopped up, but the wholesale lending has come down. And retail lending, if at all you want to handle volume, you need to have systems and technology. Like in my bank, we adopted loan original system couple of years ago, but we were not going gungo or whole hog on that entire story. But this March, April onwards, we went full throttle on LOS, that is loan original system. And we are finding that the turnaround time of a small retail loan has come down to roughly around 48 hours, which was earlier around 5 to 6 days. So this is just an example to say if you move on to technology, it's going to give you benefit. Secondly, what is happening is this: the business dimensions are now changing. For example, forget about the growth. Even if I retain my March position next March, I will be happiest person in the world. And then what is happening is this: the composition of my business is now changing. For example, on my asset side, I am moving towards more volume rather than value. Same story is happening on my liability side. Now, if I do not integrate my technology with all these new products, I'm not going to survive. The survival is possible only if I use the technology, whether it is credit or whether it is debit. That is one part of the story. Second part is the current cyber threats which have been created have pushed the technology to such an extent. For example, the AML, KYC, UCIC, all these areas, ideally we find that they are all unproductive. They don't all add value to my bottom line. But then you have to ensure that if you do not comply with those guidelines, you make an accident and wipe out all your gains. So that's where you have no choice but to deploy technology. And then coming back to the words, the terminologies which even the cooperative bankers are not thinking, like artificial intelligence or chatbots or machine learning, all these things, they're not in the world of cooperatives as of now. Forget about the big banks like SVC or Saraswat or some such big banks where they have already taken up steps to move towards that. Even in my bank, we are trying to procure one solution, which is known as anti-fraud solution, and where under the machine learning or the transactional behavior of the customer I'm trying to track, which will only generate alerts for me. For that software, I need to have a team which will ensure that my interests are safeguarded. I mean, in the informal talks, I said that I'm being facing the threat of my debit cards are being put on sale. That is something where the accident like Cosmos should not happen. Fortunately, the regulators like NPCI and all that, they have already put some tabs wherein the nefarious activities would be tracked. But then as an institution, you need to spend money on technology apart from products, saving yourself. Because the moment you save yourself, you make profit. Because the possible losses you try to arrest. And that's where the security elements are required to be improved or implemented. Couple of things which I find that they would be coming up is that one I talked about the artificial intelligence which is going to come up. The second thing which I personally feel is that the time has come to ensure that all your ATMs are also upgraded to a different level. That will happen in next 2 or 3 years. For example, the banks in some banks in Europe and some banks in Middle East have already started their ATM operations through the iris recognition rather than password or the OTP or all these methods they have migrated. That's one way of doing it. How costly it is, we are not sure. But then that's where the upgradation of technology, which is coming up from Europe and American countries to us, we have no choice but to adopt. Here is a story where the cooperative banks are even not even compliant with the EMV guidelines of 2018 of Reserve Bank of India. That's where the attention the banks will have to give, because that will ensure that the clone cards or the skimming is basically restricted. The technology as such has to be used, but as I said, currently I am investing on security rather than selling the product through technology. Selling the product through technology, the available technology is being used. But then if I do not use the technology, I will not be able to meet the regulatory guidelines. You have no choice but to adopt technology so that the volume you are in a position to handle. So that's what I feel. And the investment now the banks will have to do will be for the retail only, because that's not your appetite. As an urban cooperative bank, Subhashji talked about the Banking Regulation Act and the blues thereof. B2B had also conducted one seminar on banking regulation. I find that even after 100 days, the regulator is not coming out with the guidelines. The only meaning I draw is that the act which has been passed has to be implemented. Subhash was talking that there are contradictory guidelines in the state cooperative laws. My view is that the act has a provision that if there is a contrary provision in any other law, the provisions of the act will prevail. It would mean that any provision in the state law or the multi-state law will be defunct provided it is in tangent with the BR Act provision. So the BR Act provision becomes extremely important. Yes, it has opened up Pandora's box. It has opened up certain things which we are not really willing. Secondly, I thank COVID for certain reasons that because of COVID, we are in a position to safeguard our interests and to know ourselves better as to where we are. Second wave, fortunately, the stains have not yet come to India. But then, if the stains do not come, possibly the worry factor will have to be taken care of continuously. And when you go for volume, you go for footfalls. And that's where the retail technology, that's where the technology push, that's where the digitalization, that's where sending product across the mobile or across the internet banking to your customers will be the key. But then what is typically happening to cooperative banks is that the Gen Next is not with the cooperative banks. What is Gen Next? Gen Next technically, probably Ravi will be able to throw some light. Gen Next is the generation which is born after 96 or 97. That generation is typically not looking at all at cooperative banks. So we had to run a separate campaign to get the Gen Next in our fold and thereafter design certain products for them. But that's only because of the technology and only because of mobile banking facility we are in a position to shoot it up. So the money for another year will be spent on security is what I believe. And that's how I see the future of cooperative banks.
Thank you so much, Atulji. Very insightful, and coming from you definitely means a lot. You yourself are also a thought leader in the industry, and therefore you rightly said.
Vikrant, I have a request.
Yes.
I may not be able to continue to say whatever Ravi ji is going to make a statement. I would like to have this on YouTube. So requesting the B2B people to put the entire conversation on YouTube so that I can listen to Ravi ji later on. Unfortunately, I had to accept one more engagement, which was around 4:15. So they are already calling me. This is from Vamnicom about the Banking Regulation Act. So please excuse me because I would have loved to talk to all of you, but then somehow this is what the story is.
It is available on YouTube. Recording is happening.
Yeah, sir. And Ravi ji, the date with me is finalized.
Thank you for your kind words.
Yeah, right, sir. Thank you. Vikrant, kindly excuse me.
No worries. And that is the reason I took the first question with you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As usual, it was very insightful. Thank you.